Greetings and welcome to Genre Grinder, a podcast that is guaranteed to lower the morale standards of those who listen to it. We have also been recently condemned by the Catholic Church. With me today is returning guest Arianny Pilarte. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. I love that. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be back. Hi, Gabe.
Hi. We're going to be looking at pre-code crime movies. And as always happens, that's actually kind of a confusing thing. Like, that's not an easy subject. Besides the fact that a crime movie can mean a gangster movie or even like a lawyer movie. There's the fact that pre-code actually means something different than what I thought pre-code meant.
Now, what did you think it meant?
Well, I thought pre-code meant that they were movies that were made before the Hays Code went into effect.
That's how I always thought of it, too.
And so what I found out, and so I thought that just meant every movie before a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I researched this one, and I know this is a popular subject, so if someone listening, if I'm fucking this up, I apologize. I read a couple articles to try to take the gist from, because it seems like nobody can quite agree on what it means. But when I'm saying pre-code, I mean pre-production code, which was an official censorship practice, a law that was put into effect. And this occurred on July 1st of 1934, sometimes called the Breen era. What is often conflated with pre-code, and what, again, you and I both thought is the Hays Code, which was kind of an industry self-regulation that was put out by William H. Hays that started in 1924 and then grew into a list of do's and don'ts that the studios used to try to abide by in 1927. So there was the Hays Code in effect in this time that we talk about pre-code, but it was really a suggestion. It's more like what the MPAA is these days,
Right.
Which is self-regulation.
And we saw in two of the movies we watched that there was like stuff in there that I probably wouldn't have expected in something known as a pre-code film, but it's like they had to throw that in there.
Yeah. And so I guess the reason that we called this little short period between the beginning of the Hays Code being used and the beginning of the production code being used, we call that pre-code. But it's an exciting time when there are rules in place, but they don't have to be followed. So filmmakers are really going out of their way to flout, to stick things in that they know they're not supposed to have. It's essentially what's still done, especially like you hear a lot about this in the 1980s when the R rating was a lot stricter than it is now. Mm-hmm. Where they would have filmmakers make multiple versions of something that they knew were going to get them an X rating just so they could have something to cut out later. So in my brain, it's still pre-code still means like every silent film ever made. But I guess that then you get into pre-Hays Code and it's confusing. So I pulled movies. I made a list of movies that came out before 1934 that had any sort of, that have survived, basically, because a lot of these movies just don't exist anymore, and that involve crime as a central element. And then we picked 4. Originally picked 5, but the other one I watched it by myself, and I didn't think it was really necessary. I might talk about it at the very end here. 2 of which are part of what we consider the 3 must-see gangster movies of this era, and then 2 of which I hadn't seen before, and I would say are much more built around feminine characters and kind of a different point of view on what censorship would have been at the time. And I'd like to say I did that on purpose, but I just asked you to pick some.
It just happened. Yeah. It happened out that way.
Yeah, because you said, "Oh, I want to watch this. I want to watch Public Enemy," and I think you said you wanted to watch Scarface, and I said, "Okay, well, let's watch 2 I haven't seen," and I just sort of randomly picked 2 that sounded interesting. They ended up having a bunch in common.
Had you seen Scarface, the original one?
Yes,
before?
I had seen Scarface several times. I've only seen Public Enemy once before this, but it turned out I had just watched it because I kept on like, God, this is really familiar. So yeah, neither of us are an expert in this field. This is like a learning episode for both of us, I think.
I think so too, and it's interesting. But the only reason I suggested like crime movies, like gangster movies, is because I'm from New Jersey,
Right.
Northern New Jersey specifically. So this is, prime Sopranos territory. And
Right.
then we just kind of, built from there and was just like pre-code.
Yeah.
But
Because I
anything
was like,
about gangster films today comes from this era of movies, like anything that we love about it.
I had a thought that we would cover movies that were actually taking place at the time. Like these movies take place slightly earlier than they were made, but they're basically of the times. It's like
they're not old enough to be like period movies.
Right. It's like in the 90s we had a lot of movies about Bloods and Crips in LA, and that was a real thing that was still happening.
Right.
And where I grew up, that was the thing. It was no mobster stuff where I grew up. It was the gangs were Bloods and Crips and adjacent.
Well, we had that too. That too. But like, and when I grew up, that was pretty much what the gangsters were in the area I lived.
Yeah.
But I want to say before the Newark riots, it was, mostly the mob guys.
The Italians, the Irish, and the Jews.
Yeah.
Not so many Latins. There were like suit riots stuff down in
Arizona. California.
So yeah, these are movies that were of the time and released very close to Prohibition stuff. So that plays into them too. But it's an interesting time because we're coming out of an era where everybody's like, let's just be crazy, and going into an era of horrible war after horrible war. And then everybody gets really conservative for quite a while there.
Yeah. And also the Great Depression.
Right, that whole thing.
Right, which I think contributed a lot to like why people liked the gangster movies in particular.
Yeah. They become Robin Hood movies, basically.
Right. And then the Hays Code or whoever at the time is just kind of like, we kind of have to like remind people that these are not good people. That These are not meant to be admired.
Right.
And it didn't work.
And it did not work because they are so cool.
They're so cool, and you cast like the coolest actors and stuff. And it's just like, nope.
Okay, so let's get into this and I'll do this in release order. So we're going to start with The Public Enemy. Was released in 1931, directed by William A. Wellman, who was in World War II ace fighter pilot. And then he became an actor, and that led him to be a director, and he directed the first ever Best Picture, Wings, which is about ace fighter pilots in World War One.
Well, you said World War II fighter pilot.
I meant World War One. Because World War II hadn't happened yet.
No.
He was a World War One ace fighter. Because in World War One, the fighter pilots was like a brand new thing, so they were like superstars. By the time we get to World War II, there's planes everywhere and no one gives a shit. But Wings was... it's not a great movie, I'll be honest. It's very long, and that's a lot. But it does have the first homosexual on-screen kiss in an American film. I don't really think of it as a homosexual kiss myself. I think of it as a kiss between...
It was about affection, not about
It was about
romance.
affection. Yeah. It's but it still was enough to be censored later on. And then Clara Bow is briefly nude in that movie too.
I just looked up the running time. That's a long movie for the...
Yeah, I mean...
Jesus.
Yeah. It's got some really spectacular stuff with shot-wise. There's a really cool shot that pulls through a whole ballroom past a whole bunch of people. And it's kind of a crazy shot that then, everybody and their mother does now as an homage to that. The rest of the movie is not necessarily that good, but there's interesting stuff going on. But so I haven't seen all of Wellman's movies, but I suspect the Oxbow incident, which is a very early revisionist Western, might be his best one. But this one is probably his second best one, and probably his most important one. I think even though Wings had a lot of firsts as far as its visuals, this one really set the tone for a lot.
He also did the original Star is Born, and that's been remade.
Yes, that's true. It's another... The Public Enemy was released the same year as Little Caesar, which is starring Edward G. Robinson, and this one is starring. This is the first movie to be starring James Cagney. He had been in films before this, but this was the James Cagney movie that made him who he is. And so between those two films and the movie we're going to cover next, Scarface, the base of basically every mob movie ever since is all kind of in these three movies.
Right. And like the kind of to the point where it's almost like a parody.
Yes.
Like if you parody like gangsters, you're either doing Edward G. Robinson
or Cagney, yeah.
Or Cagney, yeah, you know. Not so much Paul Mooney, but
yeah, he was a little more eclectic with his career. He didn't become a caricature of himself.
Right. But I think thinking of Pacino and how his performance in Scarface, the remake, was so bombastic. Yeah. And Paul Mooney's kind of bombastic in this one too. So I'm like, all right, you know, Pacino, I see what you're kind of doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose not a lot of people do the Cagney thing because it became such a joke. You dirty rat, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Which he's not really doing here, by the way. He does it a little bit, but, you know, he hasn't developed that persona yet. Right. And watching the movie, you could see why he became a star. He is this tiny little guy who is not conventionally attractive, I would say. I don't know. I'm not the best judge of attractive men, but like he's kind of a strange-looking guy. And he's just magnetic, and he's not a good person at all at any point in this movie. Basically, he's going to be stuck playing a character like this over and over again. But this is really the first time he's doing it, so if you use your imagination, you can pretend it feels fresh at the very least. The movie I watched that I told you we didn't need to both watch, that actually came out the couple years before this, was the Canary Murder Case. Which is just as it sounds, it's a murder mystery, and it's so much a filmed play. It's just people standing in space reading their lines, right. And then it goes to the next scene. That then immediately watching The Public Enemy after it, and it's so cinematic and thinks about all of its shots that the whole thing, you could see how this movie, even beyond its themes, would just be this really amazing thing to audiences at the time.
I can see why it would be exciting to see, you know, just Cagney, just how he's so commanding, like in every scene he's in. It's just like he walks into a room and it's just like, now what's he gonna do?
Yeah. You know? the old saying, men want to be him, girls want to be with him.
Right. That's that's it exactly.
But I do think it's like looking back on it, it is remarkable how strange he looks. Like he's really, like, he's always got this grimace. He's always got his eyebrows arched. He's really small. Like he's visibly smaller than a lot of the rest of the cast.
Yeah,
and he's not standing
he's a
on
short kind of guy.
He's not standing on milk crates to make himself look bigger because he doesn't need to, because he's still the central performance.
I don't know if you read this, but I heard that him and his friend, those two actors, they were originally supposed to play Edward Woods, who played Matt Doyle. He was originally supposed to be Tom Powers.
Okay.
James Cagney was going to be Matt Doyle. Read that. I read that, and then William Wellman was just like, I'm going to switch the two of you, which worked out, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the guy playing the other guy is good, but he is such a supportive kind of. Mm-hmm. He's also the he's the closest we get to an audience surrogate, because he's having fun with everything, but he also kind of knows that Tom is stepping over a line. I should say Tom Powers is the name of his character, who is based on an Irish gangster that is distantly related to myself. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
all my relatives are Canadian Irish, and they did nothing cool. Tom Powers is actually based on Al Capone, and the screenplay was an unpublished novel called Beer and Blood by two newspaper guys, John Bright and Cubic Glasman, who
great title.
Yeah, Beer and Blood, because it's all about beer. Beer is what Capone was running, or what Tom Powers is running.
Right.
And the funny thing is then Scarface is also based on Al Capone. I think that the only one of the three not directly based on Al Capone would be Little Caesar, but that's the one with the actor who looks the most like Al Capone.
Yeah,
So
yeah, pretty much, yeah, which is funny.
The thing I think this does before, and I would have to do research, and I looked and I did my best, but this seems to be the first cradle to the grave crime movie, which is, something everybody did. I feel like, especially after Goodfellas was a hit, is you had to do you had to show what these people were like as kids,
right? And like, what's it called? A Bronze Tale.
Yeah, and it's at some point all gangster movies became The Godfather. I guess after The Godfather, that was the point, is when The Godfather was released. But
Godfather Part 2. Godfather Part 2 specifically. You had to see where these people came from and how they became who they were.
And you had to see that they were secretly good people that just, things went wrong in their lives. Where Tom Powers really, they show that they show his dad spanking him, but it's the early 30s. Everybody got spanked, and
but also his dad was a cop. That was another thing. It's like, okay, he is like a double authority figure.
But he's not a particularly abusive. Like, he doesn't even seem to like the spanking. It's like kind of like, and his mom is really supportive to the point that might be what makes him the way he is that his mom's always supporting everything he does. And he just falls in with the wrong crowd. But when we meet him, he's a kid, and he's already has his little cadre of criminals that he works with. There's not a lot to him that says this guy is secretly a really great person that's just been trapped by consequences. He really likes being a criminal.
Yeah, no, he really revels in it. They take the time to show you, like, he's always been like a little shit. He's always gonna be in a line of trouble. And Matt tries to be nice. Matt is like a little more even keeled. He's just like, be nice to my sister, and what are you doing that for? He tries to like rein in Tom, and Tom is just like not having it. He just does whatever he wants anyway.
And he knows, and he's really against when Tom finally turns on. Well, when Tom kills his boss, basically.
Right.
The boss is going to Matt, like, saying, what could you please help? And Matt, you can tell, doesn't want to deal with this. To the point where you have to expect Matt to be the one to like do Tom in.
No, it ends up even more tragic, especially because Matt is like the only one that has like a wife that he loves.
Yeah,
he's nice to her, and unlike Tom, who's just like, I have a girlfriend, I'm gonna throw fruit in her face. Oh, and here's this other girl, I'm just gonna like hang out with her. I'm sick of my other girlfriend. And it's just like they're two extremely different kinds of people that are somehow gravitated towards each other, but they're also like not anything like at all Tom's brother, who is obscenely good.
Yeah, I hate Mike. He's just, he does nothing but God, there's a scene where Tom comes back and they're all having dinner with their family, and Mike refuses to eat and just stares daggers at his brother because he's a criminal.
Yeah,
it's so awkward.
He's so upright. He's so self-righteous and upright and all this stuff. But he's kind of feels like a insert character written specifically by the production code to be like, this is who the audience should like want to like. This is who the audience should emulate. And it's just like, no, you made the coolest actor and the coolest character the lead of your movie. Nobody's gonna care about Mike Powers,
which is actually my dad's name, which was very funny.
Sorry, Gabe's dad. We all care.
He usually goes by Michael anyway, so.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I feel like they did. It's to the point where Wellman did this on purpose. He was like, okay, we're going to have the good guy be the most boring, squarest character in the whole thing, who really does nothing of value. There's a really good scene where Tom tries to give his mother some money, it's a very Martin Scorsese, like, Scorsese loved that scene of the family stuff. And the mom wants to accept it, but Mike won't let her. And there's this scene where they're having an argument, and they frame it so she's like down low.
Yeah.
And stuck between these two giant heads that are just yelling at each other. It's a really great shot.
It is. It's a very striking type of shot. Like you said, it's cinematic in a way that a lot of movies maybe at the time weren't.
Yeah, they hadn't really figured out a lot of that stuff yet.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I guess the Germans had,
but... yeah, and he rips up the money.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, gee, he'd rather rip up the money than, like, take it back.
Yeah. Which is supposed to be righteous, but just makes him look like an asshole.
It does.
It's you said something about him shoving grapefruit in his girlfriend's face. That's Joan Blondell plays the first girlfriend. And that's the most famous scene in the movie for some reason. And I feel like that's like a bad reflection on society that's the scene, because it's a really mean-spirited scene where she's not really doing anything wrong.
No.
And it's just a scene of a guy beating his girlfriend. It's just a scene of spousal abuse. And it's, for some reason, the scene that everybody remembers. And then everybody misremembers that it's Jean Harlow. But she doesn't even appear in the movie until the next scene.
Yeah, that's true.
This was also, I should say, this was not just Cagney's star-making role. This was also one of the big movies that made Jean Harlow into a star. And it's funny if you read... It's not funny, I should say. If you read the old reviews, people really hate her. Like, critics really mean to Jean Harlow and just talking about how shitty she is. And I think she's perfect in this role.
She's perfectly good. But, hey, Gabe, I want to correct you real quick, because I think you said Joan Blondell was the girlfriend. It wasn't. It was Mae Clark.
Mae Clark, shit. Blondell plays...
she plays Matt's
wife, who's the good one. Yes. I shouldn't say the good one. Who's the one who's treated well. Yes.
Yeah, the one who's treated much more nicer than Kitty, who is Tom Powers' girlfriend. She's the one who gets the grapefruit in the face.
Yes.
But yeah, I feel like the scene is kind of like overblown in terms of like its popularity. But I guess the legend of that scene kind of was just like that. It was improvised in a way. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Legendarily, it's supposedly that it was improvised, but I guess the true story is that it wasn't. She knew that the grapefruit was going to go in her face, but like,
I would hope so.
But I think like the way she looks in the scene, it looked like she really wasn't expecting it.
Like the classic line that nobody involved in Aliens knew what was going to happen with the chest burster, even though that requires hours of setup, and there's just no. Like I think the rule on that one is that Nancy Cartwright just got more blood on her than she expected.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you know what? That makes sense. I never questioned it, and now that you say that it would take so much time to set it up, then I'm just like, yeah. But then, of course, the legend lives on.
Right.
And so I'm sure, like, all the actors, like, throughout the years are just like, no, we never knew. We had no idea. And it's just like, sure, Sigourney.
Yeah. I got more. Oh, well, see, and then we're talking about how that scene's the famous scene. And I think the famous thing of this movie is the best line is when someone asks about where Matt is, and Tom says, that sucker's too busy going to school. He's learning how to be poor. It's such a good line and such a good reading. It's so good. It's like, that should be the star thing, and that should be what shows on all the the BFI's 100 best movies. That should be the.
But you know, that's such the ethos of like these crime movies. Is just like that they don't want to. Even as kids, they're not interested in school. They're not interested in doing, like Henry Hill says in Goodfellas, that good government bullshit. Like, he's not interested in it.
Yeah.
As we see, what's his name? Mike joins the military. He signs up, or he gets drafted or something.
He signs up. Yeah. He wants to go.
That's even more annoying. That's just like, you didn't even get drafted. It's just like you volunteered to possibly go die for your country. And I don't blame anybody not wanting to do that.
Yep. And he gets badly injured too. He has to come back.
Oh, that's
he's
right.
hurt. And he looks. Right. They make him look kind of ghostly. Like he looks gaunt the rest of the movie. I think they must have put some of that makeup on. And actually, speaking of makeup, that's another note I have. Is the guy who plays Matt is clearly the with you saying the thing I hadn't read, that he was going to be the lead, 100% makes sense, because he's conventionally attractive, he's pretty, and he's wearing way more makeup than anybody else for a lot of the movie. He is clearly the product of silent era.
He's like wearing lipstick and stuff, like you can
tell. He is a product of what the silent era. That was what men looked like. That was what the romantic leads looked like. So I'm sure that they're like, yeah, let's get this attractive man and all his prettiness, and then like, oh yeah, this isn't working because he's playing the bad guy.
Right. And then when he dies, it's so much more tragic.
Right, because we like him, and he's the pretty guy. Another note I have is that there's an interesting scene where, and I think I talked with you about this already, where they go to a club and they are offered the best seats in the house by the staff, and the staff are all black men, and they treat them really respectfully. And to me, that wasn't necessarily a sign that Tom and Matt aren't racist, because I'm sure they are, but they recognize that they're part of the same class of people, basically. It was, yeah, and it was a moment of class solidarity where they respect each other, but they aren't. I thought that was an interesting take, because I always brace myself for really racist shit in old movies.
Yeah, and especially for movies where these guys are kind of like new money. Yeah. In a way, so they get rich and think they have to like show off and all that stuff, and like are really entitled in a way. But no, like Tom and Matt are just really cool. But I guess they kind of didn't need to add more cruelty.
But yeah, I mean, that was also interesting because, again, the one you didn't watch, the black staff is used entirely for jokes. Like they hear the scream and have to run out of the room. That like classic cowardly stuff that they would do with black characters in horror movies. So it was another interesting contrast between the two films. This one that just felt more modern right off the bat, even though it's 92 years old at this point. And also, it's interesting how shitty the cops are in this movie. Like they are just bad people. It's kind of interesting to have this flat out ACAB kind of thing. With first cops we see shoot their friend in the back as he runs away. They open fire without even establishing their criminals. Like they just see some guys running and they shoot them in the back. And then they go to the kid's funeral and brag about killing him.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was like, and the mother is like right there, like sobbing her whole face off, and it's just like she's upset. She's like, he was a good boy. He didn't deserve this and all this stuff, because like that's what any mother would do. And then of course the shitty cops are just like, he was never any good. He deserved what he got. And I'm just like, he wasn't even all that involved.
No, he was. Yeah, he was just sort of along for the ride.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's you could see why someone would, a censor would watch this and say, hey, wait a minute. We're making the criminals look like cool people that are fun to be around, and yeah, all the authority figures. Like, I think the only worse person in the movie than the cops would be their boss, the guy who's kind of like using children. I can't remember his name. He's got a big putty nose. He's played by, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. His character's like the one true villain of the movie, I feel.
Putty Nose is played by Murray Cannell.
Yes, thank you. Okay. He's the only more villainous person than the cops, and he's the only more loathsome person than Mike.
And of course, they give him a name like Putty Nose.
Yeah, I don't remember what his was that his actual name, or did I just call him? It's Putty.
No, it's Putty Nose.
Yeah. Yeah, he just looks. I couldn't remember if I called him that because he had a weird nose. Yeah, Putty Nose. And I was trying to research what was, because a lot of these movies would then further censored or flat out banned after the production code goes into effect. But this one didn't have as much information on it. But it seems like really it was the moral ambiguity that bothered the Hayes type people. And the record of what they changed when they re-released it in 1941 were 3 scenes specifically. There's one that is one of the better scenes in the movie where there's a very gay presenting tailor who fits.
That's right.
That was originally cut. Yeah, he's very funny. And it's another scene where Tom's actually being nice to a working class person, even though he's super fey, and it would be very easy to make Tom into a character to make fun of the fact that this dude's gay.
Either make fun of him or just be like, don't touch me all weird. You're being weird. Yeah.
He has no problem with it. And it's actually a really nice scene, and the guy is actually funny. He has some really good lines.
Yeah, that was a good exchange between them.
And then they cut a shot where while they're in hiding, I think it's Putty's girlfriend brings Tom breakfast in bed. And we all know that they had sex the night before, and it was that shot of breakfast in bed was too racy, apparently.
Interesting.
And then they also cut scenes from the seduction that takes place before that. And something will come later is if this movie was made today, they would make sure we had a reason to like Tom. Whereas the other movies we're going to cover later, if they were made today, a lot wouldn't change, and the audience would automatically change their readjust their alliances. I don't think you need to change anything about it.
No, I think I think for this movie they would try to make Tom somewhat sympathetic.
I'm trying to think, what's a modern gangster movie with a guy who is your main character who's this loathsome, and Training Day, maybe? That's
maybe Training Day, maybe also American Gangster with Denzel. Because I don't know if we get a lot of,
I actually haven't seen American Gangster, so I don't know.
I saw it once, I think when it came out, and I don't think we get a lot of backstory until.
Because Denzel, he's a cop, not a gangster, but Denzel is definitely 100% bad person in Training Day.
But he's a cop in that one. But
Yeah, I'm trying to think something of an actual criminal. Because Henry Hill is a pretty likable character, and he does do the right things. And then Pacino's Scarface, his downfall is because he does the right thing. All the Godfather characters do bad shit, but are still likable people. There's just not a lot. There's not a lot of just scumbag who's the main guy. It's usually the side guy is the scumbag.
Right. Now, wait, I just noticed something because I have the cast list in front of me. So the actor who plays Matt as a little boy is Frankie Darro. And Frankie Darro, he's in 3 on the Match that I watched today. And you told me that he was the voice actor for Lampwick.
Yeah, he's
Pinocchio.
Yeah, and he's I didn't even notice it was the same kid. He's the funny kid in 3 on a Match, I think. I believe that's Frankie Darro. Yeah.
That's 3 actors that we've
we have a lot of crossover.
Yeah. Joan Blondell is in 3 on a Match as well.
Well, and then do you have anything else to say about this? Because we can just move on to Scarface, and that's a good segue right there.
Yeah. Justice for Matt. He did not deserve to die like that.
No, yeah, Matt. I think if you did remake it, you would make Matt be the one who sadly has to put Tom out of his misery. It is a pretty shocking ending, actually, now that I think about it, where the bad guys just deliver dead Tom wrapped in a rug to his house and knock on the door, and then he just falls on the ground. The end. It's
funny because it's I think one of the things that the code had to enforce was that the criminal always had to be punished in a way, but it usually ends with them being killed.
Yeah.
But in this case, Tom was killed by other criminals.
And off screen on top of that.
Right.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal finale, honestly.
It kind of feels like something that, I don't know. I can't know what the production was like on this, but I don't know. Maybe it was something that would have to be added after. It would make sense. Sure. Yeah. Because it seems strange to, you know, like it's even sadder because like Tom was just like, I'll turn over a new leaf. He's like, because his friend died, you know, and he was just
Yeah.
like, he wanted to get out. He wanted to get out, but it was kind of like too late at that
Yeah.
point.
Whereas Henry Hill gets to run off to be
Witness
a schnook.
protection.
Yeah. Yeah. He has to. Tom has to be brutally murdered off screen. And the fact that he's wrapped in a rug means that he's probably like in terrible shape. Like his face is already beat up enough, but he probably has no more insides. It's just like missing limbs. Like he's probably been just absolutely brutalized,
absolutely demolished.
Because they gangsters really like torturing people. They weren't good guys.
I always heard that like it was a sign of respect if they left your face like good enough to have an open casket funeral. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they messed up your face, they really didn't like you.
Yeah.
You really did something.
So we'll talk about Scarface, which came out the next year, but from what I understand was actually finished the same year, and they just took it some time to come out because of censorship issues. It's directed by Howard Hawks, who, unlike Wellman, is a very famous director and maybe one of the best directors of all time. One of the most important directors of all time, just for westerns and comedies alone.
Yeah, he is prolific as a director. Like he's someone who can't be pigeonholed.
Right.
He's done everything.
Yeah, he's got this. In this, he's got one of the most influential gangster movies, and he's got some of the most influential westerns. He basically, between him and oh boy, what's the name of the guy who did It's a Wonderful Life? Frank Capra. Him and Frank Capra basically started the screwball comedy thing, which we still have today, and we go.
Do we?
Yeah, I mean, we go through phases where it's suddenly popular again, and then it goes away again.
Yeah, I know, it's hard to write. I feel like you know, it doesn't compare.
No, it's hard. It's hard to write screwball, and it's hard to act screwball.
It is hard, but also because I feel like a lot of people don't commit.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to commit, and you can't be half in, half out, or like you can't be like winky about it. Like it has to be sincere.
It's a weird situation where everybody in the movie is a straight man and the comic relief at the same time.
Right.
Like almost everybody in the entire movie has to walk that line, and it's hard, and they got to talk real fast. But
they do.
Yeah. So Scarface was actually produced by Howard Hughes, who was a lot more famous at the time. Howard Hughes of locking himself in his room and saving his urine and his toenail clippings fame.
He's done other things as well.
He done a couple other things.
He did also produce Wings, as we mentioned before.
Yes. Yeah, and he made a very large plane at some point. There was a movie about him that, speaking of Scorsese, The Aviator.
Good movie. Leo should
but
have won an Oscar
a better biopic is that episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns goes crazy.
Oh my God, that's right.
That's like the best Howard Hughes biopic ever made.
That a 20-minute episode of The Simpsons.
It's not even that. He's like a C story, so it's only like really like 5 minutes of the episode is about him.
Oh God.
And so Howard Hughes he personally handpicked Howard Hawks, seemingly because he liked his name. But the thing about this movie is it went through so much controversy that Hughes actually kept it after it was banned the second time after being released, and then the production code went in. He just kept it in a personal vault, and the only reason we were able to see it is because he died. And people went to his vault and got it out, and we're like, "Oh, it's still in good shape. Let's show this to people again." So it basically disappeared until 1970. So like people our age and a little bit older have always had it available because of home video, but before home video, it was basically gone.
So you're saying De Palma wouldn't have seen it until the 70s?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure
That's
that De
crazy.
Palma saw it at a big deal. Like, I'm sure they premiered it in New York or LA, wherever. So I want to start with Scarface. I actually want to start with some of what went into its banning and censorship, because Howard Hawks and Howard Hughes tried very hard to make sure it wouldn't be banned, and they went to the Hays Code and self-inflicted edits all over it. And they even showed a rough cut to the California Crime Commission, and the police gave it their blessing and said, "There's no way someone can watch this movie and think, wow, I want to do these crimes," which of course is wrong, but looks good for the Hays Code when the cops.
Well, they also made them add that subtitle to the movie,
which is the most awkward shit, where it begins with this big, very fascist ass statement about telling the government has to step in because we can't stop these criminals unless we get government intervention.
Well, the Public Enemy had something like that too. They also had to have like a disclaimer at the beginning of the movie, which I'm just like, this is stupid. Why are you like? I don't know. I don't know. It's dumb. It's so dumb and awkward and so blatant. To put stuff like that before a movie, and then oh my god, the blender's going again.
It's okay.
I was saying that it's so bizarre and awkward to throw in this disclaimer basically saying these are you're about to see a movie with bad people, and don't be like these bad people, as if people go into a movie and walk out of it and go, I want to be a criminal. Like
at the same time, it's like the kind of thing that some people now these days want to be in front of something like Wolf of Wall Street, because they're afraid people don't. Basically, every Scorsese movie, like people.
No, but it's so annoying. It's so Wolf of Wall Street, especially when that came out, and still the discourse to this day about that movie is so ridiculous that I can't.
They need like a subtitle at the bottom that flashes what he's doing is bad. The movie is telling us that what he is doing. I mean, it goes back to Taxi Driver. Is a movie about a serial killer trying to find a reason to serial kill, and people were afraid it was, it's his burden to bear. Maybe the one that did need it was Fight Club. Maybe Fight Club should have had more.
Yeah, but you know what? If you took Fight Club, no, it's just people. It's like it's the stupidest thing in the world. General audiences are very stupid, you know, except for you and me.
Everyone else. The worst.
What a bunch of rubes.
I saw Fight Club when it came out in the theaters. I was in Phoenix. I went back to Tucson. I told my friends, you got to watch this movie, because nobody talks about how Fight Club really was sort of a flop. No one saw it. And then I found out that a friend of mine had seen it, and he and his friends started a Fight Club. And I'm like, are you sure he saw the movie?
Are you serious? They started a Fight Club?
Yeah, right off the bat. I mean, it was like that movie had really stupid fans since day one.
Have you heard David Fincher's story, or the story about David Fincher?
Oh, which one?
Where I guess his daughter was like dating a guy, and he said that his favorite movie was Fight Club, and David Fincher told his kid to dump him.
I mean, it is a hard movie to like. I'll give it that much.
It's not even that hard of a movie to like, but if
hard movie to admit you like. How about that?
Yeah, but it's like if it's your favorite movie, and if it's your favorite movie for the wrong reason, then it's just like why.
Anyway, so yeah, this movie really wants us to make sure we understand these are bad people. And it's not hard to see why it was controversial, because it's really, really violent.
It's so violent.
There's not like gore and blood everywhere, but Jesus Christ,
it's a lot of shooting, a lot of death, and Paul Mooney is having a blast. He is just like woohoo, like he is reveling in all the murder and the destruction, and it's just like, I'm like, wow, this guy is like really sadistic. It's cool.
No, the best scene in the whole movie, again, they always get the wrong scenes when they do these retrospectives. The best scene in the whole movie is that his buddy's place is just getting pelted with machine gun fire, and he's on the floor, and he's talking to his friend, and he's giddy because he's like, they got machine guns that you can hold? I didn't even know these existed. We got to get here. Write this down. We got to get some machine guns that we can hold. Like, he's in mortal danger at this exact minute. He could die any second. He doesn't know those walls are going to hold, but all he can think about is how excited he is to use a Thompson machine gun later on.
Yeah, he was really excited for that. And then, of course, he uses it later, and it's just like he's just shooting at nothing. He's just wasting these bullets like crazy because he's so excited to shoot this gun. And I'm just like, oh my god! Like I can't even complain about Pacino in Scarface because he had Paul Mooney as an example. So it was just like, wow.
I mean, I'll say that, like, one thing the remake gets correct is that Tony is funny, and on purpose too.
Yeah.
And Pacino's not as funny as Mooney, but they both are funny guys. And,
I think Pacino's voice is funny. Like his.
There's a couple moments where Pacino. My favorite part in all of the Scarface remake is when he's ignoring Michelle Pfeiffer, Elvira, I think she's called in that movie.
Yeah.
And he's in the bathtub and he's just ignoring her talking, and he's just watching a nature documentary. He's like, "Check out the pelican, fly, pelican." It's it's the best scene in the whole movie. It's the best line read.
No. And just the way he says cockroach, and it's just like that movie has an absurd amount of brown face, and like when I watched it, I was like, I should be mad about this, but I'm gonna go with it because I was like, what is this? But I think it's also, I think I remember reading that like the Cubans were mad. The Cubans were so mad about this movie they refused to let the movie shoot in Miami.
Yeah. They had to recreate all those
in like North Carolina or something.
Yeah. Yep.
But I'm just like, I was like, none of the people in the movie are actually Cuban, so like, how mad are you really?
Yeah. I mean it was every kind of Cuban too. It wasn't just the anti-Castro Cubans, it was also the pro-Castro. I mean, it was everybody. It's like, no, don't do this.
No, every Cuban was mad about it. It was crazy. I feel like the Scarface remake gets a lot of shit, but I don't think it's a bad movie. But I do think it kind of is the example of what the Hays Code didn't want from this movie.
Yeah,
because Scarface, when that came out, suddenly every rapper on earth is just like, Tony Montana's the greatest guy, and I'm gonna reference him in all my songs, and I'm gonna emulate him. And he's like, you get the money, you get the women, you get the power. And it's just like, oh, this is what the Hays production warned about. But then of course Tony goes out like an idiot at the end of the movie, at the end of both movies, to be quite honest. He goes out like a huge chump.
He thinks in the original movie, he thinks he's invincible because he just thinks he's invincible. In the remake, he thinks he's invincible because he's so coked out of his skull that he can't make choices anymore.
He doesn't even feel pain.
Yeah, like he doesn't even know he's getting hurt.
No.
Actually, before I forget, I should say that part of the what was changed here is that because it was seen as glorifying crime, and having sympathetic criminals, which again, I don't think that Tony is very sympathetic.
I don't either. It's not that he's sympathetic; it's that he's charming.
Yeah, he's
because funny, he's played by a handsome actor. Like,
yeah. But in the original script, he was always supposed to go out in a blaze of glory, and there was a compromised version that is the one that's available now, where he's shot dead by the police well unarmed instead of taking police out. But they had also an alternate ending with Tony turning himself in, claiming he had seen the error of his ways, and then he is sentenced to death and hung. Like, so he goes through the whole sentencing process, and he dies anyway, but the right way.
Well, this way at least was cooler.
But in this sort of moment of parallel between the remake and the original, in the original, Hughes got so pissed off that he threw that version out and released the version where he gets shot, the version we see today, where he gets shot well unarmed. There's a famous story that Brian De Palma kept on getting X ratings from the MPAA and kept on cutting things, and eventually, when I can't remember which producer it was, finally told the MPAA, "Look, you need to give us an R rating." And so it was for years there was a rumor that there was an X-rated cut of Scarface that had much more blood and gore in it. But when he made, like, when it first came out on DVD, they talked to De Palma, and he said, "No, I just sent back the original cut I had. So the version you see is the version that we originally edited. There was nothing edited out of it for the R rating. That was the version that got an X rating."
Amazing.
So there's always been these rumors that there is deleted scenes from, like, the chainsaw scene.
That scene upset me.
There's rumors that was way bloodier, but no, they shot it exactly how they meant to, and they only showed as much as they wanted.
I was not prepared for that scene when I first watched that version. I was just like, oh my God. I was like, this is actually really horrifying for especially for the time. I was like, my God.
Yeah.
But no,
yeah, I mean, but then you compare it to this one, and I mean, they're just, the body count is massive, and the car crashes.
Massive. No, and this movie famously uses X's in scenes.
Yeah, see, I was just gonna okay, so the thing about the X's is that when I was first in college, and I had just gone to art college, and I came back, and a friend of mine had taken at the University of Arizona, so like a real college, had taken beginning film class, and they showed them Scarface as a movie to explain symbolism, because there's X's in most scenes where someone's killed.
Right.
And then I was like, I guess that's clever. And then when I was in college, I needed to take more electives, and they had a beginning film class, and I had no interest in becoming a film student. But I'm like, sure, I'll take a beginning film class. Exact same thing. He showed us Scarface because of the X's to teach us about symbolism. So there's got to be some book somewhere that all beginning film teachers read, and they say, okay, Scarface 1932 is where I got to start with
well, because it's so blatant. Even in the opening credits, they have like a piece of paper with an X scrawled on the back of it. It's in the opening credits. So, and then they just use it all throughout the movie, and it's either if it's not like a X, it's like a cross. It's like
cross, some sort of cross. Something.
The bowling alley one was really cool. As soon as I saw they were in a bowling alley, I was like, uh-oh.
There's a kind of famous recreation of the St. Valentine's Day massacre that occurs, and that one's particularly nice because they can't show these guys getting mowed down, but they show their shadows as they're mowed down, and then pan up to some X's up. They're shadowed against the wall.
To bring up Scorsese again, he kind of uses that in The Departed, in the scene where Martin Sheen gets thrown off the building, and as he's falling down, because it was like a building that was under construction, you can see the X's of tape on all the windows as he's falling.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I only think I ever saw that movie one time. And obviously the rat at the end made sense to me, but I didn't notice. No, I never noticed the X's.
Yeah, you'll see it now. Like every time I watch it, I'm like, yep, I noticed that. And the only reason I knew that is because I've never seen this movie, but the only reason I knew about the X's in The Departed was because I'd watched the special features, I think, about the making of the movie, and they brought that up, and I was like, well, that's cool. That's a
Scorsese loves to bring up. I took this shot from this great movie from 1910 that I'm the only one who owns a copy of it. It's really great.
Yeah. Good Scorsese impression. I love it.
Yeah, I actually have a note here saying, "Did you ever take a film class, Arianny?" But you caught to it before I had to, so I just thought that was so funny that both classes did it.
Well, I've taken a film class, but they never showed Scarface to me.
No, so maybe it's not cool anymore.
I don't know.
The 10-year difference between us, it went away. They did something else. Do you remember them showing you a specific movie to describe symbolism?
They always showed like Battleship Potemkin.
Okay, I mean that one is earlier and full of symbolism, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think the oranges in The Godfather is another one.
Yeah, that's actually that's like the X version of. Well, yeah, that's like their X's. They use oranges in The Godfather.
Which Christine always notices when we're watching anything gangster related. If she sees oranges, she's like, "Fuck, someone's gonna die." I'm like, no, someone's just having an orange Julius. It's cool. They're like, nope, he's dead. He's doomed. The other scene that they added is even more awkward, I think, than the beginning and ending placards, is that there's a scene with a bunch of law enforcement types condemning gangsterism directly to the audience.
Oh my God, that's right.
It's just stops the movie. It's a bunch of old guys, and they're preaching. Again, it's really fascist shit they're saying. They're not saying just like normal conservative. Like, they're flat out tying it to cinching up borders, and they're saying all gangsters are illegal immigrants.
No, and don't they have like a token like Italian character going, "I do not like this guy," and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
He does not represent who we are, like shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was exactly that. And then they even have a line about the police's hands being tied by lax rules. It's so funny. And yeah, I mean, it's clearly just like they got the Hays Code people and said, "Hey, you want a scene in the movie?" Mm-hmm. And then they thought that would be enough to not get their movie banned, but then it got banned as soon as the code went into effect.
Well, even more than the violence that's like distinctly pre-code is just like all the weird stuff with the sister, man.
Yeah.
Which I thought was already super weird when I watched the remake. Like, I was really upset by a lot of stuff involving the sister, but it's like also equally upsetting here, and they're kind of more explicit about it in a way.
It feels like one of those things that Oliver Stone would have made up for his remake script.
Right?
Yes.
It feels like so made up. It feels like something sick from inside of Oliver Stone's mind, but it's like, no, this is from the original.
The original script, he's more or less in love with his sister. I mean, it's interesting because in those same documentaries, Oliver Stone says he doesn't like the Muni film. And he sticks so close to the story for at least the first half of Scarface that it's kind of remarkable how much of a remake it is. Because it feels like alien in comparison because it's in color, takes place in a totally different part of the country, and way later in time. You were saying about the
alcohol and drugs.
Yeah, instead of alcohol, it's
cocaine. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Don't laugh at me. You said that I was saying about the brown face.
Yeah. You were saying, Christine's laughing at me because I sniffled, so I'm going to blow my nose again.
When you were talking
about coke, Gabe.
When I was talking about coke, that's why she laughed. Okay, hold on. The brown face thing. So the remake, you got people like Pacino and what's his name who plays his boss?
Robert Loggia.
Robert Loggia. I mean, Loggia really does not pass as a Cuban guy, man. Pacino at least sort of looks Hispanic. I mean, you can kind of buy it, but man,
I thought Stephen Bauer was pretty close. Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
Wait, he is Cuban. Now that I'm thinking about it,
is he? Yeah, because I was gonna say he's from the Caribbean. I don't know exactly where, but yeah.
So he is Cuban, and he was like the best looking one in the movie. I remember just being like in love with him, like watching the movie. I was just like, wow, you are so good looking. I hope nothing bad happens to you. And then of course, everything bad happened to him.
But in this version, it's kind of the same thing because in 1932, Italians are basically considered non-white people.
They're an ethnic minority. Obviously,
that is scapegoated for everything,
right?
And so you have Paul Muni is a Ukrainian Jew. He's not Italian. He's not even from the Mediterranean.
Listen, Jews and Italians have an agreement. They play each other in Hollywood in perpetuity. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm part Ukrainian Jew too, and I don't think I could pull off an Italian. Maybe a northern Italian, but not a Sicilian for sure.
No.
But it's sort of interesting that you really, I mean, you don't think of it that way because we don't think of Italians as anything but white people these days. Well, most of us at least, or the Irish for that matter.
Right.
I was going to say or the Jewish, but that's recently changed.
Well, you know what? I've always said I think the reason why they were discriminated against is not so much because of like their so-called lack of whiteness. It's because they were Catholic.
Yeah.
Largely.
Same. Yeah. Jews and Catholics were not particularly beloved. But yeah, so there is a sort of a parallel there between the two movies using people who are not of that culture as real big stereotypes too, because like Paul Muni's doing a spicy meatball accent here. He's doing a It's a Me Mario all the way through this movie.
I think everybody except the mom. It's like Paul Mooney and Dorvac. I can't figure out how to pronounce her name.
Dvorak is what it looks like, but it's apparently Dvorak.
Dvorak.
Just Dvorak. But it's funny because it's a made-up name. It's a stage name, so she's allowed to tell us to pronounce it any way she wants.
She used a difficult name for her stage name. What a boss.
Yeah, on purpose. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. So Paul Mooney and Dvorak, and yeah, the two of them have like these fake accents, but their mom, I think the mom is like an actual like Italian.
Italian, yeah.
Yeah.
But it is funny to compare their accents to the one Pacino does in Scarface, in his Scarface, the Lil Fred, that kind of stuff, like not pronouncing the D's and
like. God,
how am I going to get a scar like that eating pineapple? I can't do it. I used to do it, but I can't do it anymore.
So funny. You're making me want to watch the remake again because it's so crazy.
Well, so here's the thing about that. I think the remake used to be a favorite. I have not been able to watch it for like decades. Like I have no interest in revisiting it. And I figured out the exact moment that makes the original a better movie is that he figures out that his boss, who in this movie is played the Robert Loggia character is played by Osgood Perkins Sr., Anthony Perkins' dad, and current our generation Osgood Perkins' grandfather.
Yeah.
And they all look identical. It's very funny.
Yeah.
They're all these just lanky guys. Tony figures out the exact same way too. He tricks his boss into admitting that he put the hit on him. And then kills his boss, and then goes and steals his boss's girlfriend. And then in the Muni movie, he looks out the window and sees "The World Is Yours" on a billboard, which is, I guess, actually a reference to a different movie that I have failed to write down. But it's a reference to an earlier gangster movie. And then in the De Palma version, he looks up and sees the Goodyear blimp says "The World Is Yours."
Right.
In the Beauty version, there's like maybe 15 minutes left in the movie after that because he's going to have to, there's going to be the retaliation, and that happens almost immediately. In the De Palma version, and I know this from watching it a million times, it is the moment where you have to put in tape number 2 of your VHS collection because the movie is only half over.
That movie's really long. That needed 2 cassette tapes.
It's going to keep going for a really long time. Like that happens, and then you put in tape 2, and it's the take it to the limit montage. It's the first thing you see on tape 2. Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, Dvorak plays Tony's sister, who is Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio in the remake, another famously non-Hispanic woman.
Yep.
And Karen Morley plays the Michelle Pfeiffer character. There's a comic relief in this that I actually think is really funny.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like it should be annoying, but I actually think it's funny. It's very obvious, just shoehorn comic relief. It's a comedian named Vince Barnett.
Yeah, and he was funny.
He plays Tony's idiot secretary, basically. And there's like a scene where he gets in a fight over the phone, and he tries to pull a gun on the phone, and Paul Muni has to stop him from shooting the phone. And then he tries to take a message for him while I can't remember if it's a bar or like a restaurant is getting
It's a
shot.
Restaurant. Yeah, it's a restaurant because that's when he meets the girlfriend, like for lunch or something.
Right. And he's trying to take a message, but and instead of being scared that there's shots happening, he's scared because he couldn't hear the message, and he's afraid that Paul Muni would be angry at him. I think he's very funny.
I thought so too. I was like, I didn't expect there to be comic relief in this movie because there's usually not much comic relief in these movies, but he was good. I thought he brought something to the movie. It wasn't like wasted, in my opinion.
Right. And then there's a very good cameo from Boris Karloff as a rival gangster.
He's the one who gets killed in the bowling alley, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. He's a nice surprise.
You haven't brought up George Raft.
Yeah, and I was just trying to remember his name. Thank you. George Raft is the friend.
He's the Stephen Bauer in this movie.
And he's the Stephen Bauer, and he's very, very different character in this one. He's probably maybe one of the most different between the two.
Yeah.
But this is a case where you could see George Raft, you could see him playing the lead in this movie because of the style of gangster he's playing.
He's kind of like the he's also kind of been parodied in like cartoons and things like that.
And I wonder if he's flipping a coin the whole time, and I don't know where that comes from originally, but I feel like Two-Face, the Batman character, is supposed to kind of be George Raft.
Yeah.
Especially in the animated series.
I think it must be from George Raft. I think he was the one who kind of originated like that character beat. I think because he said he wanted to make himself distinctive in the movie. And then, of course, famously, when Some Like It Hot came out, he basically plays himself in that movie as well. And there's a scene where a character's like flipping a coin, and George Raft like snatches it from him, and he's like, "Where'd you learn that cheap trick?" You know, so
yeah,
I think he knows that it's very self-referential type thing. You know,
so in a weird way, he ended up being the bigger pop culture. He had a bigger pop culture impact than Muni even had.
I think so. I think you know, people don't, when people think of Scarface, they think of Pacino. They say Tony Montana.
Yeah.
You know, everybody knows Tony Montana, but I think people think of a gangster from Scarface. They think of George Raft because he's flipping the coin.
And I think people actually even picture Anne Dvorak, more than they picture a lot of, because she's playing kind of a quintessential young flapper girl, kind of almost embarrassingly to Tony.
Her little dance scene, because she's you know, she's very
supposed to be awkward. Yeah.
But she's also like a teenager or something.
Yeah,
right?
She's a kid sister for sure. Yeah.
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 The one moment that like hammered in that this movie is very aware of like how Paul Mooney's relationship to his sister is so weird, where he first catches her like kissing the guy in like the hallway of their house, and she tells him like, "You don't treat me like a sister, you treat me kind of like a," and she stops, and it's just like the audience is supposed to fill in like that gap. It's just like, you know, this guy doesn't like think of his sister as his sister, he thinks of her as like something else, which I don't think the remake does that. There's
one scene in the remake where he's killed his best friend out of misunderstanding, and he's taken her back to his place, and she comes in lingerie and tries to shoot him.
Oh, that scene upset me so much, because I remember I watched that movie with my friend and we were like texting back and forth, and I can literally find the texts where we're just like, "What's happening? What is this? Oh God! Oh no!" And then she shoots, and we're like, "Oh, okay, this is fine." Like we were like, we were ready for like the worst thing to possibly happen, and then it ended up not. So we were like, "Okay, it's better that she just like kills him instead of just tries to sleep with him," because we were really upset about that possibility.
Yeah, ultimately she's making him understand how much he fucked up, because he probably doesn't even think of it in those.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was waiting for that to happen in this movie, obviously, because I'd seen the remake first, but it doesn't happen. She kind of like, I mean, she goes to shoot him, like she goes to like, or something, like she goes to, I think, right?
I think she just, if I remember right, she just disappears for the rest of the movie, and then it's him and the Karen Morley character. Actually, no, she ends up.
No, it was Cheska, because remember,
Cheska comes back in and she plans to kill him, and
then they have the shootout with the cops,
and then they decide to and she gets hit by a stray bullet from cops. Yeah, big differences in the remake. It's rival gangs that take him out, not the police.
Right.
But yes, that is Scarface. I love Scarface. I think it's a great movie. It's really quick and punchy and violent and
enjoyable to watch. Very, very watchable. very watchable movie.
And so then, speaking of quick and punchy, chronologically, the next one is Three on a Match, which you just watched before we started talking.
I just watched today, yes.
And so this is definitely the pre-production code from the feminine point of view, but made from a male point of view.
Yeah. No, this movie I feel like is bizarrely punitive towards.
This is a movie that is pretty proudly misogynistic, I think.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. In some ways, it's kind of surprisingly sweet. But yeah, its punitive side is kind of shocking. Yeah, it's only 60 minutes long, which is crazy. And then I found out it was remade not too many years after under the title Broadway Musketeers. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that version will certainly... No, that version is actually shorter. So I guess they just didn't think they needed a lot of time to tell this particular story.
I guess so. And I'm on the Wikipedia as well. I had no idea this publicity photo of Joan Blondell, which is very famous, I didn't know it was a publicity photo for this movie.
Yes.
But it
has nothing to do with the movie. It's
not
her
at all.
Naked. Well, she's probably not actually naked, but she's on a chair, and her bits are being covered by the chair.
Yeah, it gives the illusion that she's likely naked or might be naked, which is the point. Yeah. But what a bizarre publicity photo.
It really makes you think that she is the bad star. Influence in this movie, and the star for that.
And she's not. Or she's, she's one of the stars, but she's not the bad influence. Or, she starts as the bad influence. No,
she actually has the better arc of the two characters. Well, this was directed by Mervyn LeRoy, or Leroy, but I think it's LeRoy.
I think it's LeRoy, too.
He was a burlesque comedian since childhood. And he was an actor, technician, and eventually director. He made Little Caesar, which was part of made me feel good about us not watching Little Caesars. We're already watching another one of his movies.
Oh, good.
And then he made, in 1932, the same year, he made a different Paul Muni crime movie, I Am a Fugitive for a Chain Gang. And then the next year, he co-directed The Gold Diggers in 1933 with Bubsy Berkeley, which also is not a crime movie.
But has Joan Blondell.
Yep.
Really
it's
good
not
movie.
A crime movie, but it is a pre-code movie, and it did have things that were considered naughty, and but it is one of the greatest movies ever made.
It's just fantastic.
Yeah, so actually, I would recommend seeing all of those films at some point. But then he also did uncredited direction on Wizard of Oz, and then was the producer-director of the original Gypsy. But not quite as important as Howard Hawks, but almost nobody as important as Howard Hawks.
Right.
So he was up there, and so this is a movie that was a hit at the time, but I had never heard of it. It just sounded kind of neat. And the title Three on a Match is based on a superstition I had never heard of. It says if 3 soldiers in a foxhole light their cigarette from the same match, one of the 3 will be killed. Or there's a version that says the man who was the 3rd on the match will be killed specifically. And they sort of have a thing about it in the movie. At some point they have a text to explain this to us. But it really became bad luck. You're not supposed to light more than 2 cigarettes on the same match.
Which I'd never heard.
I mean, maybe it's just because we don't smoke as much anymore, but I had never heard that before.
I've never heard it either. And I don't know. It's a weird superstition for sure, but yeah, it probably comes from an era where everybody smoked.
Everybody smoked, and it was World War I, so 1 out of 3 people was definitely going to die.
And what it was just it was that that the light from the match would be visible.
I mean, that's got to be what it really is. It doesn't mention that in any of the things, but that has to be it. Where you don't light a match, you're going to get hit by a sniper.
Right.
Yeah, that's got to be something to do with it.
Yeah.
I maybe should have done a deep dive into the research of the idiom. I feel like there's probably a great podcast for that somewhere. I don't know. Do a search for it, listener, and find the podcast that talks for 2 hours about a specific idiom. I'm sure it's awesome, whatever it is.
Well, it's a handy bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah. This has also has Dvorak, and is a totally different character. She's not playing Kid's sister anymore. She's playing the top how do I want to say this? There's basically 3 girls. It's really 2 girls. There's a third girl who doesn't really matter to the story. This is really about 2 girls who go to the same school, and one is an overachiever and the other's an underachiever. One ends up marrying a wealthy man. The other ends up in the
like a vaudeville actress type of thing.
Yeah, which is supposed to be naughty, but again,
well, being an actress was looked down
I fucking
upon.
want.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, being like a showgirl was kind of like looked down upon.
Right.
But I'm looking at the poster here. Joan Blondell had top billing.
Yeah,
on the poster, I mean, because she was probably the more famous one at the time,
and she has the better dialogue, I suppose, and she is the hero of the piece.
Right.
The Dvorak character is basically just a perpetual victim. He's either making bad choices or having bad things thrust upon her the entire movie. But the idea is, one grew up to be a delinquent and a party girl. That was Blondell's character, and the other one was a respectable person. And then there's a third played by Bette Davis, very young Bette Davis, she was kind of in the middle. Like, I guess I think if this was not a 1 hour long movie, there would be a bit about how she just I can't remember. She's a hairstylist or something.
I don't even know.
She has just like a normal job.
Yeah.
She's just like a normal middle of the road person.
It feels like they brought her in to like round out the cast, and maybe because like Betty just got a contract or whatever, they're like, throw Betty in, and that'll fulfill something in her contract. But I don't think she particularly adds anything significant to the movie in terms of story, except for star power.
Yeah. And so the 3 of them meet as adults. So there's a whole section of the movie. I mean, this is a movie that tells a story about children becoming adults, and it's still only an hour long. It's crazy how fast everything moves. They get back together just by chance. They happened upon each other when they're at the same place, and they have lunch, and they say that they're gonna, hang out some more.
And that's the scene where they light the match and share the cigarette. And Dvorak. Am I saying it right?
Dvorak. Again, it's a made up name. So you can say it however you want. No, it looks like Dvorak.
I know it does look like Dvorak, but I need to like write down like the correct pronunciation. Dvorak. So yeah, that she's the last one to get the cigarette lit in the scene, and then like from that point on, it all goes crazy.
Yeah, so she just like, I guess the idea of being around, like, so they invite her to a party and just being around the party. Like, I'm like, oh, the Blondell character and the Bette Davis character are just going to ruin her life. They're going to put her in all these situations, but they almost immediately realize that she is talking to the wrong man and ignoring her adorable baby child. And they're like, we need to do something about this. And immediately Blondell, well, they're on a cruise. I should say they're on a cruise, which is weird. And there's a scene where we know that Dvorak is not sleeping with her husband anymore, which they try to get around the censors, like basically, like, oh, by the way, these 2 aren't having sex anymore, but we can't say that, so we'll kind of imply it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, you're ignoring me. You don't want to know anything about me, all that stuff.
Yeah. So they're on a cruise, and she decides to run away with this guy and take her son with. And Blondell, instead of going, woo, party time, actually hatches a plan to save the kid by handing him off to a stranger, which is a really bad plan.
But I guess it was more common at the time for stuff like that, to hand children off to people who could better take care of them.
Right. And it is a stopgap. She does plan on getting the kid back to his dad.
Right.
And so then the thing that was my favorite thing about the movie is then it cuts to like, okay, so we don't see it happen, but for whatever reason, the husband decides to hire these 2 women who have returned his child to just be their nannies, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like the sweetest thing in the movie, because in my brain, it was implying that Blondell and Bette Davis are actually a couple, and that this guy who is too old and busy to have sex anyway was just like, oh yeah, you guys could, as long as you're taking care of the kid, you guys could just come live at my house and be and be, quote,
Be
best
like
friends.
living, yeah, gal
Quote,
pals.
roommates. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were roommates.
Yes, exactly. So there's actually really cute scenes with where they haven't seen the mom in like a year now, and the kid really likes being around both the women, and it's really sweet. And that's like the one scene that I really like Betty Davis in and feel like she needed to be there is she just has this little play date with the kid, and it's a really
Yeah.
sweet little scene.
But I do wish Betty Davis had gotten more to do because Betty Davis is great. She's
Yeah,
a great, you know, it would have been funny if she was kind of just the one kind of telling things how it is, that, you know, Blondell is like a busybody, but Vorchak is like irresponsible and stuff like that. It's just like,
yeah,
but I guess the movie's trying to push this thing where it's just like you think you know how somebody's going to end up in the world, and then everything switches. And even like have that like in the beginning too, when you see Blondell as like an older adult, they have like that little scene where they're reading like the Setzi novel.
yes.
Which
Which is
was
another really because they're in a I don't remember what you call those kind of pseudo prisons for
like a
girls,
reform school or something.
reform school. It's funny to me because reform school movies are like a big exploitation
Yeah, no, they're big in
subgenre.
like with a lot of lesbian undertones and all that.
Right. And so there's one little brief bit where the woman playing the piano and there's a girl playing piano, there's a girl next to her, and the two of them are very clearly a couple. But other than that, yeah, this movie is not that kind of salacious. It does not go into what happened at reform school. It's just basically just one scene. All the salacious stuff is really what happens to Vorjak. She basically almost lets her child starve to death one time and then gets the child back, and then it gets even worse.
I know the poor kid. He's like, I'm hungry, and she's like, here, eat these like pistachio shells that are on the table. It's just like, why are you suddenly like the worst mother in the world? Like, what? I don't. Was it the match? Like, I don't know. It felt like such a bizarre
I
switch.
Another thing, they have to censor the fact that she's clearly on drugs. She's strung out.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because she's picking at herself, and I mean, it's a decent performance from Verjak, where she's
She's
definitely
like rubbing her nose and all that.
yeah.
Like,
So they're trying everything they can to say, hey, she's on heroin or something, like she's strung out. And the crime part, like for a while there, I'm like, oh, I suggested a bad movie because no crimes are happening. Um, her her new beau is basically trying to not really pimp her out as much as make her get money from
her rich
her
husband.
ex-husband.
Yeah.
And because he owes a lot of, he's not a gangster himself, but he owes a lot of money to the bookies. And so the bookies figure out who she is and who her kid is and kidnap the kid, which also played into censorship, but I'll get to that in a minute.
Well, wasn't it
And
that the boyfriend kidnapped the kid
right,
to
the
get a
boyfriend is the
ransom?
one with the plan. That's right, you're right. The boyfriend's the one with the plan. Let's kidnap the kid and we'll just get money out of your ex this way.
Right.
And then the
Because
gangsters are
because
like, "Whoa!"
she tried to get money from Blondell, out
Right,
of sympathy, and Blondell only gives her like $80, which is a lot of money
a
for like
lot of money back in,
for
yeah.
1932. Should we check the inflation calendar?
I did. I don't remember what it was, but
Well, let's see, because the guy owes $2,000 to the gangsters. So this movie came out in 1932.
yeah. So
So
32, 31. I like that.
yeah, so if he owed $2,000, he owed 43 grand, like over 43
Jesus
grand.
Christ.
Jesus. And so
Yeah,
if he got 80, she got $80 out of Joe Blondell. That was only like $1,700. So
that's
yeah,
still so much money. My
that is
God.
still a lot of money. That's rent. That's rent in like a
Yeah,
high end apartment here. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, so the guy is just like, "Oh, we're gonna kidnap your child," but also he doesn't tell. And uh, shit,
Dvorak.
Rorschach. What is her character's name? Let me go by that. What? Vivian.
Vivian.
Vivian. So the boyfriend was Lyle Talbot in the movie. He
Mm-hmm.
kidnaps the kid, doesn't tell and Rojak that he's gonna do it. Doesn't tell Vivian, and she's like, "What are you doing here with my kid?" and he like lures the child. It's just like, your mom misses you. She's crying for you. And this poor sweet little kid is like, okay. And she's just like so upset being implicated now in like the kidnapping of her own son. Even though that's literally what she did in the first place, but
yeah. but so yeah, the gangsters figure this out, and they send some guys to make sure this goes right. And one of those guys is Humphrey Bogart,
who is so hot in this movie.
Yeah, but also it's interesting that both him and Bette Davis are side characters with plenty of lines, but not very necessary characters, because the two of them basically became superstars together when they made The Petrified Forest a couple years later.
They became like the biggest stars ever.
So it's kind of funny that they made this other movie together, and that wasn't the one that really caught on. But it's also because they weren't the leads, I suppose. But I have a note here saying it takes 47 minutes for the mob guys to show up. It's 47 minutes of a 63-minute long movie. The movie ends in this. The whole movie is really judgmental of Dvorak's character, which isn't really fair. She makes some dumb decisions, and she is not taking care of her child. But
it's so mean to her.
She realizes that the gangsters are going to kill her and her son because they're not getting their way, and so her big plan is she gets lipstick, writes on herself, my so-and-so kid is in apartment blah 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 upstairs, and then jumps out the window and commits suicide.
And the cops are waiting below. Obviously.
And they're like, oh shit, on this random dead woman's shirt, it tells us how to solve our crime. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And you feel like, I feel like modern audiences are going to look at it and say, oh, she redeemed herself. But I think that it was meant as a punishment, at least from the censor's point of view.
I think so.
She needed that to happen to appease the Hays Code.
Right. She had to die in like a noble way. She died in a noble way, saving her child from these, evil people.
And I looked it up, and the Broadway Musketeers version ends the same way.
Are you serious?
At least change that crazy shit. No.
Oh my God.
Same way. But so the thing about it, the thing that made it a really salacious movie was not what happens as much as what happened in the real world when it was released. Because it was released the same, like within days of the Lindbergh baby kidnapping.
Are you serious?
Like
after or before?
Yeah, like the day after, the weekend it was announced.
Let me see. October 29th, 1932 was when the movie was released. Lindbergh baby. He was kidnapped. March 1st, 1932.
So that would have been making the movie.
Yeah.
When he was kidnapped.
And they were like, let's not even change the story.
Yeah. Well, and there was just enough time that
I don't know. How long does it take to film a movie that's an hour long? Surely it probably...
Right. And they moved movies really quick back then. So part of me wonders, were they in the middle of filming and they're like, uh-oh, we better take this...
Well, also, it's funny enough that you mentioned it, that little boy in the movie, it looks a lot like the Lindbergh baby.
Yeah. They quickly redoing his makeup on set.
Well, because he's little blonde, curly-haired cheruby baby what a really cute kid actor he is. Like, I was just like, oh, you're adorable. No wonder people want to kidnap and murder you. He's a very cute kid. Good kid actor. Some of them are usually annoying, but he was really sweet.
It says in the notes here that there was concerns raised, but the kidnapping subplot was approved because the perpetrators in the film are assumed to have been arrested.
Assumed.
However, studio later entered into agreement with the Hays office to not make any more kidnapping-themed movies.
No more children getting kidnapped.
Which, yeah, that's like...
But then they remade it, like, years later. Was it...
Just a couple years later.
Yeah, so was it even post-Hays Code? 1938?
No, it was
no.
No, it was 38. It was right at the height of the production code, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's very funny.
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, I really did enjoy this movie. I wanted more like sleazy Humphrey Bogart because he's so
Yeah.
sleazy in it.
Well, what one thing that I can't be sure on because I haven't seen enough movies, but the reviews from the time, a lot of critics who liked it were really excited about the way time moves so quickly.
Right.
They were really excited by the way they would show like newspapers and stuff, which I know had happened in movies before this, but maybe just not to that degree where it would happen over and over and over again.
Well, I was
I should say I missed my favorite part in all of Scarface is when they show the passage of time by superimposing a machine gun firing over
oh
the
yeah.
days of a calendar flying off. That's
Yeah.
like
That was
such a
really
good
cool.
good shot. I totally
Yeah.
forgot about that until right now. But yeah, so it feels really weirdly paced to us now, but I guess some critics thought it was somewhat revolutionary at
Well,
the time.
in this movie, they have like the year they show. I think the movie starts like 1919, something like that,
Yeah,
and they show the beginning of Prohibition. They show the war, World War One. Like they show all these things that are culturally relevant at the time that maybe contributed to the culture.
yeah.
But then they also like weirdly throw in like news articles about the characters. Like I told you, like the one that made me laugh the most was just like uh uh Robert Kirkwood, who's the lawyer in the movie, he's going down to the beach house to, hang out with his son. And these two girls are also staying with him. And I was just like, why is this in the newspaper?
Because the audience needs to know.
I know, but I was like, that's so funny. What a bizarre way to like do an establishing shot. Just like put like where your characters are gonna
Yeah,
be in a newspaper. It was so funny. But like it then made sense when the child got kidnapped and they would put news updates
yeah.
in the transitions.
It uses stock footage, and some of the stock footage includes a scene from Scarface
Yeah.
about prohibition being used. So
Are these both Warner Brothers? Maybe that's why.
I think that yeah, not only that, but they might all be what's his name, Zanuck.
Yeah, Daryl F. Zanuck produced Three on the Match.
Yeah, I think that they're all Zanuck, just a bunch of Zanucks everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, they've recycled the same footage from Scarface. Probably because they had it in a vault somewhere. And it's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
this will, show prohibition happening. And it's like, okay.
So yeah, it's a kind of neat movie. It's really short, and I could, yeah, I don't know if I would watch it again. I guess it's so short that maybe I would.
I mean, you
Um,
can. Do you think the punishment was deserved?
no, and I feel like if you remade the movie, um, there would be more. Like she would at least get a couple lines out as she was dying.
Yeah, all
She'd
she
be
did was
lying there.
scream and jump out the window.
Yeah, that's all, and then she's just dead. Like she doesn't get some like he's upstairs. Tell him I loved him. Something like
Yeah.
that. She doesn't even get anything. She's just dead. They just like roll out her dead body.
Like they could have added like another minute to the runtime to make that happen.
Yeah, yeah. It's weird. It's very
Yeah.
abrupt. But that will bring us to the third movie we watched, which
Yes.
was
Well,
the
the fourth
one
one.
that's the fourth. My bad. The fourth movie we watched, which was the one that sounded the most salacious to me when I read the description. Um, the Story of Temple Drake from 1933. It is directed by Stephen Roberts or Stephen Roberts. I'm not sure. Uh, I haven't seen any of his other movies, but he has well over 100 credits if we count short films. And he died of a heart attack only 3 years after making this at the age of 40.
Jeez.
Um, his other most famous movie is there's a Ginger Rogers movie called Romance in Manhattan from 35. That one seems to have been a pretty big hit. This is also another movie where the crime part, the gangster part, is sort of flavoring. It's really a super sensationalist drama, and I did not know when I picked it that it's based on a William Faulkner novel.
And then you
And
watch it, and it explains so much about this
and
movie.
and that's the thing is I don't know anything about Faulkner, so I was like, oh, that's a big name. Maybe I should research this, and I just didn't have the time to dig in. Do you really know Faulkner? I mean, is can I lean on your expertise in this? Have you read any Faulkner?
I read As I Lay Dying quite a long time ago,
Okay.
as a student. Um, but it's kind of like a Southern Gothic kind of book, which is kind of what this movie
Sort of, yeah.
jumped out to me as in a way. I haven't read too much Faulkner, but I kind of think of him as like this Southern goth kind of guy, as far as his stories go.
Well, the Cliff's Note version of this character, Temple Drake, is that she first appeared in his novel Sanctuary in 1931, and that's the basis for this movie. And then years later in 1951, he wrote a second book called Requiem for a Nun, that was then the basis for other movies. And I took this following statement is taken verbatim from Wikipedia article on the character of Temple Drake, just to sort of give people an idea of someone smarter writing it. Joseph R. Urgo, he wrote that the character is a, quote, intersection of, quote, female agency, quote, pornographic representation, the social construction of femininity, and other 20th century, quote, major feminist issues. According to him, audiences in the late 20th century perceived Temple as the victim of various social pressures inflicted upon young women, while earlier ones had blamed her for the sexual assault she undergoes throughout the story. This is a story that was read totally different back in the day than it would be now. If this was remade, if Sanctuary, the novel, was remade now, Temple Drake would be much more of a heroine, because she doesn't do anything wrong, really.
No,
but the entire movie.
She's kind of like portrayed, like her and Vivian in Three on a Match are kind of like similar in a way. They're like these like bad women who like do bad things, like they go philandering with men, and they smoke, and they kind of do whatever they want. And meanwhile, they're like associated with like these respectable people. Like Vivian's married to like this very respected lawyer, and Temple is the granddaughter, or the niece.
Granddaughter of a judge.
Yeah, the granddaughter of a judge, the local judge, and everybody really respects the judge. And she kind of uses him as like a, like a cover for her misbehavior.
And I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think you might agree with me on here that if it's true that audiences at the time saw both these characters as deserving of their fate, I would suspect it has more to do with the fact that they are privileged class, and audiences in on the cusp of or in the middle of the Depression are probably really wanting to see rich people that use. I mean, because the one thing Temple Drake does bad is that she hides behind her privilege. I can imagine audiences being like, yeah, that because.
Well, during the Depression, like you'd see a character like this, you'd be like, well, they don't know how good they have it. Any of us would kill to be in a privileged position like them, and they're just like, Vivian in Three on a Match. She's like, I'm bored of my life, and I want to run away and go to Europe, and then go off with this other guy who's just like more interesting, but he's in a lot of debt, and it's kind of like, lady, are you crazy? Are you insane? Yeah. Like, why would you do that?
Whereas I feel like Temple Drake, who's played by Miriam Hopkins, I haven't mentioned that yet. Temple Drake is really just being a normal late teen, early 20 something.
Right. Like there's nothing unusual about what she's doing at all.
And the really bad stuff that happens to her, she leaves a party with a guy who's drunk. And it's not even to sleep with him. It's just supposed to be a ride home. And he crashes, and they stumble upon gangsters who are working with bootleggers.
Right. Well, also remember, she leaves a party after rejecting a marriage proposal from a really nice guy that everybody wants her to marry, but she's just like, he's boring, and she's not that interested in him.
And she gives him a really good. She gives a very good "It's not you, it's me" speech. I think. One of the better "It's not you, it's me" speeches I've heard. But yeah, so she ends up in this situation where she's just trying to leave the party, and the guy crashes, and the guy is no help at all, and they end up in this bad situation. And what's really interesting, other than the fact that it sort of becomes a gothic horror movie for a little bit there, is that so much of these scenes are not about how scary the gangsters are, of which there are only I think only 2 of the guys are gangsters. It's more about how poor the bootleggers are,
right?
And these southern bootleggers. And there's this scene where there's a woman. Her name's Ruby. Is the character's name. Ruby is really does not want Temple to be there, but she's also protecting her. And it's really interesting. Just like there's things about her clothes being messed up and her shoes. She doesn't have shoes, and that Ruby's baby is just sort of sitting next to the stove because she doesn't have staff to help her take care of it. She has to be stirring the hooch. And so there's really interesting scenes of Temple, I think, noticing that she shouldn't be afraid of Ruby and the bootleggers, that they're just poor people, and that she, as those scenes go by, she recognizes that the gangsters are the scary people, and they all try to protect her to a certain extent, knowing that she's going to have to spend the night and that the gangsters are already ogling her. It's a horror movie to the point where there's it's a ramshackled house with long dark shadows, and it's a stormy night, and there's light, and actually some of the language that the studio or that the censors objected to is covered by the sound of thunder.
Which
but is something Christine noticed that I didn't.
Watching this movie, I was just like, this is scary. Why is this so scary and terrifying? And like you said, with the lighting, it felt like very German impressionistic lighting. And I was just like, oh, wow. This is all bad. Bad things are afoot at the Circle K. It's really crazy.
The gangsters are immediately just lecherous misogynists. Right off the bat that they are scary and dangerous. And then there's Tommy is the name of the boy who's going to protect her, who looks like Tom York.
But he's so stupid because all Temple is just she's like, I don't like this. We should leave. We need to get out of here. And he's like, what do you mean? I need to
I'm too drunk.
I'm too drunk. And he's like, I want to get another drink. He's like, let's get another drink. And she's just like, no, are you kidding me? And it's it just reminds me of kind of like the opposite of Barbarian, to be honest. But Barbarian, I don't know if you saw that one yet.
Yeah, I did.
Well, the whole thing about that movie is just women's intuition.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big theme in the movie, that women know when something's wrong, and men don't. Or men don't really care. Men don't really have to worry about that in the same way women do.
Well, and it also ties into a certain kind of subset of horror movie that's really about class warfare without being about class warfare. It's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a movie about class warfare. It's something that you don't see in Texas Chainsaw Massacre if you're watching it as a horror movie, but the fact that Leatherface isn't necessarily a bad guy, that he doesn't understand what's happening throughout that entire film. But this movie has these people are scary until you get to know them, and then they're actually going to protect you. It's an interesting dynamic that that in a weird way ends up sort of being perverted into what became slasher movies, where the rural poor people really are monsters. They're good people that just have different upbringings, they're actual monsters. So I found it kind of interesting as a early artifact of that sort of brand of horror movie. But that part doesn't last that long.
No.
That's really just a small section of the movie. And then so she...
But it's still all really tense.
Yes.
Everything, the whole movie, you're just kind of how is she going to get herself out of this one?
And she doesn't, is why it's so shocking.
Yeah.
She is sexually assaulted, and the boy who was kind of trying to protect her is killed. And then she is taken away by the gangster who is... What's his name? His name's Trigger.
Trigger, which is, good name for a gangster.
Yeah.
Played by Jack LaRue, who I clocked as being one of the heavy guys in
Yeah.
Three on the Match. Because I was
He's
just,
not even credited.
he's not
He's
even
just in the
credited. But
background. Yeah.
I'm watching this. I'm like, wow, who's this like really scary, intense, good looking guy? And I'm like, he looks like the scary guy from Temple Drake. And then you
Yeah.
then you looked it up and it's literally him. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I managed to clock that.
Yeah.
And then turns out George Raft was initially supposed to play him. So
And
we're
he is like a very super Raft like
yeah,
caricature. Kind of like he's definitely playing a scary version of Raft.
right. But it's just so funny that like all of these movies we've watched have been connected in some way by actors either playing different parts in them or they were initially supposed to be in it or you know, it's
Yeah.
it's cool.
And then this one also has more black characters that really could have been horrible stereotypes but aren't. Louise Beavers is she's playing a madam, but they couldn't say that, so she's sort of running a really seedy bed and breakfast kind of is the way. I don't know how else to describe it. Like it's very clear that she's running a house of prostitution,
Yeah.
but they aren't allowed to say it. So Trigger just takes Temple to live at this random.
He just sets traffics
hotel.
her basically.
And you know the plot could stop there, but the twist is that Tommy, the boy who was killed by by Trigger.
By Trigger.
It turns out that what I can't remember Lee. The sort of dad character. I don't know if he's supposed to be Tommy's dad or just like the guy who works with them because it's a multi-family household. But he's blamed for the murder, and Temple's would-be beau, Stephen, is
it's like his defense lawyer.
He's his assigned public defender, and he finds Trigger to interview him, and then sees that Temple has been living with this guy and dressing like a hussy, yeah. and she sees that Trigger's about to murder him, so she pretends. It's like the whole kicking the dog and saying "go back to your or not the dog, but like when you have a movie with a wild animal and you you have to kick it to make it go back.
It's like what it's like what Nicole Kidman does in Moulin Rouge.
Yes,
you know,
the fake send off.
The fake send off where it's just like, I never loved you and I'm happy here with this guy. Just leave us alone and get out of here and I don't want to see you and all that stuff. But she's just doing it to save him. And of course, Jack LaRue, Trigger, is just like, oh, hey, maybe this girl's all right. Maybe she's fine. Maybe she's cool. But then, of course, he realizes that she was only like bullshitting. And gets even more mad.
Yeah. And so she, in a pretty cool scene, she ends up killing him and escaping.
It is a really cool scene.
It's sort of I mean, I don't think that they really had, I'm sure that like rape revenge was a literary genre by then, but it wasn't exactly a film genre. But I don't think I shouldn't say I don't think. I know I'm never going to be doing a rape revenge episode of Genre Grinder, so I will say that this film
is as close as we're going to get.
Yeah, and also if you really are interested in exploring that idea, this is probably one of the earliest examples of what would become much more explicit later on in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. But I mean, the scene where he's dead and he's gripping onto her hat and she has to like pry his fingers open to just get it out of him. Like, oh, it was a tense scene because it kind of went on longer than I expected it to.
Yeah. This movie doesn't waste any time, but it's also unlike Three on a Match. It has every scene is needed and goes on for like as long as it needs to.
Yeah.
And so she goes back home and basically just wants a clean slate. And she's this one guy, the lawyer, is the only one who knows what had happened. And so she pulls him aside and she says, look, if you make me go on the stand, it's going to ruin my reputation. And also I murdered that guy, so I'm going to get in trouble. And so he calls her up on the stand anyway, and in the scene that could have been just very bad considering how long ago this movie was released and how sensationalistic it is, he without saying anything sort of pleads with her to tell the truth on the stand, and she just sort of stares back at him, and when he realizes she's not going to, he calls her off the stand, and then she has her come to God moment and says, no, I need to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And it's a really understated scene, which and I was not like sold on the dude playing Steven up till that point, but I think he's really good in that scene. And it ends with her saying everything, and then she just faints, and we assume that Lee was found not guilty, and that her life was probably ruined, but not nearly as bad as
innocent man going to jail.
Right, which brings me to the book's ending.
Oh God, I don't know anything about this.
So in the book, the first thing is I gotta. So the book, the sexual assault is very, very graphic.
Oh God.
And I feel bad even describing this. So like a bit of a content warning for the next couple seconds. In the book, he violates her with a corn cob that he finds, and the original cut of the movie, apparently it had him grab the corn cob, and then in the way the movie works now, he walks towards her, it cuts to black, you hear a scream, and then it's the next morning.
Right.
And it says in the original cut that was not okayed by the Hayes people, he grabs the corn cob, and then it cuts to black, and you hear a scream, and then he's still holding the corn cob the next morning.
Oh, sick.
Which is pretty extreme, honestly.
Oh my God, that's actually super.
So like they were never. I mean, I can't believe they shot that much of it, to tell you the truth. But then the other thing is that the book ends with her deciding not only does she not want to, she doesn't want to be put on the stand, but then she perjures herself and flat out says, "No, I saw it. Lee killed Tommy. It's his fault, and Lee is sent to the gallows."
Wow.
So she doesn't just. It's not just like in the movie. It's about to be bad through omission. She actually goes out of her way to implicate the innocent man in the book version.
I like this ending better.
Yeah.
To say
so
the
I mean,
least.
in comparison, it's a happy ending.
Yeah. Or at
like
least she did the right thing. So this is the first time we're like, well, not the first time, but at least we don't see the woman being punished.
Right. Like we know that she's going to be punished, but that it will probably be fair because she did the right thing, and also, I mean, her grandfather is still the most famous judge in town. There's at the very beginning of the movie, there's a scene where the grandfather is sort of giving Stephen a hard time about being a public defender, like how it's better to be a prosecutor. And he talks about how there are certain laws that matter more than other laws. And as he's doing this, he pours himself some alcohol. And I think that that's a joke at the expense of Prohibition, that this judge that is preaching these loose moralistic view of the world. I think that the idea that he's then partaking from alcohol is supposed to be a joke. I don't know. I might be wrong, but
no, I think I get that.
But yeah, so it was a very dark novel. That was turned into a pretty dark movie. So the only things that were that thing was changed. The sexual assault was changed, and then she uses they changed the fact that Louise Beavers is clearly they turned it into a quote boarding house instead of a brothel.
Right.
And then they covered some of the naughty language with thunderclaps.
Well, another interesting thing is that this movie pretty much went unseen for a long time. It didn't get released on home video until December of 2019.
Because Criterion got it.
Yeah, Criterion got a restored version of it, which is kind of crazy. But I can kind of understand why this movie kind of was like forgotten about for so long, because it's really like intense for audiences at the time. I kind of go into watching movies like this and thinking like, okay, how will an audience in the 1930s approach it? And even for me, I was just like, wow.
It's like it's like a horror movie for a lot of it, and then it's like a really intense courtroom drama at the end. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that critics at the time might not have liked it very much, but I think it stood up pretty well. I was surprised.
I think it stood up pretty well too, but yeah, I'm sure it probably got savaged by critics for being so upsetting.
Gross. Yeah. They thought it was gross. I think that might even have been the word I read in the review, is just gross.
Yeah, and plus icky. With Jack LaRue being like so scary.
So those were the 4 movies we watched. Like I said, I also watched The Canary Murder Case. I would only recommend that one to people who are big fans of the Thin Man movies. We never did say what the people could hear you on other than my podcast. So how can people find you and hear your more of your thoughts outside of this single podcast?
If you're interested in me being a pedantic person yelling about the current state of pop culture, you can listen to me on a podcast that I co-host with 2 of my friends called Not All Podcasts Wear Capes.
And I have not been keeping up with superhero movies this year, so
you're better off.
Yeah, I mean, I did really want to see the new Black Panther, but I just haven't been able to. But at this point,
that one was good. Like, that one I think is worth your time.
I'm like, at this point though, I've waited a month. It's probably going to be on
Disney Plus
in another month anyway. Yeah. So.
No, that one's definitely worth your time.
I saw that Black Adam is on HBO Max, and I don't know if even then I'm going to be wanting to watch it.
It's horrible.
It just didn't look very interesting. I don't know.
It's awful.
Well, I'll just say then that I still technically have a Twitter. The Twitter hasn't closed since the last podcast, like I kind of thought it would. So I can be reached at Genre Grinder on Twitter and at Gabe M as in Matthew Powers on Twitter. I started a Instagram because I assumed that Twitter was going to close, which is genre_grinder_Gabe. I haven't been doing much with it yet, but I'll try to. And then there's also a Genre Grinder Facebook page and the Genre Grinder website, where I have been trying my best to keep uploading new reviews at least a couple times a week. So thank you for Arianny returning. And until next time, follow that list of do's and don'ts, including no white slavery and no revealing lingerie. These are important. All right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Walk